Hello, everybody, and welcome to the June edition of the NSGIC 3D Hydrography Program for the nation. We're glad you're with us today. As most of you know, this is a NSGIC USGS cooperative, and it's intended to engage you all in the derivation of a 3D stream network and hydrologic units from accurate, high-quality 3-depth data, and of course, IFSAR in Alaska. If you have any questions during the presentation or anytime, please feel free to put them in the chat. And we will gather them up and put them in a Q&A doc at the end. Just want to do a quick update on program activities. All the forum recordings, the PowerPoints and Q&A docs are available. You can go to the NSGIC. I'll put in a bunch of URLs here in a minute in the chat. But you can go to the NSGIC knowledge base, and you can see, for instance, last month's presentation is there. This is a little bit new for us. As most of you know, we mentioned yesterday, if it's not, I'm sorry, you should have a message from me today. If it's not in the learning link, it's probably still in the, if it's not in the knowledge base, it is still in the NSGIC learning link. So if you're looking for something and you don't find it in the knowledge base, go back and check out the learning link. We had an April meeting. If you're interested in seeing that, that is actually in the learning link. So I'll correct that. Also, I saw that Josh is on, and anyhow, Josh, do you want to talk about the I don't see if Jane's on. Jane's on too. Josh or Jane, would either of you like to talk about the hydrography stewards community and what's happening at ESRI?
Sure. Jane's on too, and she can correct me for anything I misspeak about. But at the Esri UC last year, we did a lunchtime meetup, and it was really helpful. So we're going to do that again. It'll be again at the Esri UC in San Diego, July 12th, 11:30 to 12:30. And even though they say there's no such thing as a free lunch, this will be as close to that as we can get. But we do ask that people sign up by July 3rd so that we can get an accurate head count for the lunches. You're welcome to drop in after that, but we can't guarantee you'll get a free lunch. So look forward to seeing you. This would be intended for state stewards or stewards of hydrography that want to talk about some of the work they're doing. It's kind of a quick meet and greet. Nice to have the face-to-face time. So we will be following up, though. Some people have asked that how they can be involved if they're not going to be at the UC. We don't have a way to really do a hybrid meeting, but we will do a follow-up in August, kind of to summarize some of the discussions, and we'll do that through a Zoom meeting that will be broadcasting soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Jane, for putting that link in the chat. Just wanted to quickly update you speaking about community. NSGIC annual meeting, most of you are aware, will be September 25th through 28th in New Orleans. We did want to tell you we are making plans for a 3DHP workshop. It's going to focus on practical measures for 3DHP preparation. And we will be enlisting some of you to help us with moderating that workshop. You watch for a survey. We're going to inventory everybody about what they're doing to prepare for 3DHP. We've got a few specific questions we'd like you to respond to, and that content will be used to develop the workshop. So if you're scheduling your time at NSGIC, please make sure that you are there Monday morning, bright and early. We'll also have a 3DHP for the Nation interest group breakfast. That time or day is going to be aligned with the final program, depending on when we have related presentations. And if you are presenting on a 3DHP related topic, EDH, inland bathymetry, anything like that, let us know. We want to make sure we promote it to the group and let everybody know it's there. The call for abstracts, conference registration, award nominations, and the inaugural golf tournament, registration for all of those is open right now. So please go to the NSGIC website and send in your abstract, sign up to attend the conference, nominate somebody, and see if you can get on Sam Moffat's golf team.
Bring it on.
Other than that, you know that we establish and manage a hub. Phil does a great job of keeping that updated. One thing I kind of skipped over quickly is the culvert mapping activity. That is, I'm going to put a couple more links in the chat. That is now available on the hub, and Phil is working on developing a dashboard for that information. So you will be able to interact with the information a little easier than just seeing the spreadsheet. Phil, any comments you want to make about the hub or the dashboard you're working on?
No, a work in progress. Thanks, Linda.
Like the rest of us, right?
Yep.
So I'll quickly ask, are there any questions on program activities, things going on? Anybody? I don't see anything in the chat. You're welcome to come off of mute as well if you have questions. Alrighty then, let's get to the main event. I'm very happy to introduce a man, no, he doesn't need an introduction, Dennis Peterson, the Tennessee State GIS Coordinator. And Dennis, I will stop sharing and let you share.
Great, thanks, Linda. Let's see if I can make this transition here. Share.
There we are.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining today. I'm really excited about this opportunity to share with you sort of Tennessee's experience with hydrography. A lot of things happening around 3D HP in our state. Hopefully, I'll be able to share some lessons learned, and you'll be able to take away some information that may be helpful for your state and how you're moving forward with participating with USGS and 3D HP. For starters, the agenda for today's discussion is going to be going over a brief history of hydrography in our state, talking about sort of how we arrived at this point with participating in 3D HP and why is Tennessee pursuing this at this point. Talk a little bit about some promotional efforts, planned projects that we have for 3D HP, and then get into some examples of use cases within state government that have been helpful in us promoting and selling this effort that's resulted in funding commitments from 2 of our agencies within Tennessee government. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is switch from the PowerPoint and then demonstrate our Hydro Hub site, which is under construction as well. So Phil, you're not the only one, but 2 of my team members have made significant progress on our hub site. We wanted to kind of showcase that, and that's also where we have links to our use cases for the 2 state agencies. So again, a brief look into the past. The Tennessee Base Mapping Program was a multi-year effort from 2000 to 2007 to create a variety of framework GIS data sets. Hydrography was one of those layers that was actually in our specifications created as part of the digital terrain model to do the ortho rectification and then extracted out as a very accurate spatial representation of surface water, but really had no attribution whatsoever. So at the completion of our statewide program in 2007, we attempted to work with the USGS tools and conflate the hydrography data with NHD. And that in and of itself is probably a entirely separate presentation. But make a long story short, it was unsuccessful. So what we really have in Tennessee is two different data sets. Obviously the NHD, and we also have what you see here is the Tennessee Base Mapping Program hydrography, which is draped over the hillshade DEM from our statewide QL2 LiDAR. So as you can see, it's very accurate spatially, lines up fairly well with the terrain data, but there's very little attribution. We do have flow direction. We do have feature names, artificial paths, as you can see here in this example. But we really have none of the NHD, schema or attribution associated with that set of hydrography. So we've been working with this duality for many years now, and we really wanted to, when we first heard about 3DHP, really wanted to jump on this because this is our data set that we have is, if you look at the GMA grade for our hydrography from 2021, it's the lowest of, it's a B-, lowest of any grade that we have for our framework data sets. And we wanted to build on the success of 3DEP. As I mentioned, we have statewide QL2 LiDAR coverage, very successful in terms of finding partnerships at the federal, state, and local level. And again, trying to resolve this issue of this dichotomy, if you will, or duality of having two different hydro data sets. That one has the suite of NHD attribution, which is very broad and dynamic for NHD. But obviously it doesn't have the accuracy of our Tennessee Base Mapping Program features. And so regarding NHD in Tennessee, unlike other states, there's been virtually little to no stewardship / maintenance of that data set. So, in many cases, and I'll go through some examples here in a little bit, it reflects the original blue line streams from the topo quads from 40 years ago, which a lot of you can relate to. So here's just a couple examples of, and this is, some of these slides that I'm showing here are actually part of slides that are presentations that I've given to stakeholder communities of, trying to make the argument of why do we need a new hydrography data set. So what you see here is the QL2 LiDAR bare earth hillshade, DEM, with the blue line streams from NHD. And the green circles simply highlight areas where there's spatial misalignment between those two data sets. So obviously there's pretty severe discrepancies with those two data sets. Some other examples of the misalignment: eastern portions of Tennessee, Sevier County. Another significant area here, Middle Tennessee, where you can see the depression and the DEM, but certainly doesn't align with the blue line stream. And then there's obviously features that are in NHD that really have no corresponding depression or terrain associated with it. Rutherford County, again, Middle Tennessee. The bottom of the screen here, you've got blue line streams that defy gravity, where it goes up and down over a ridge. So obviously, I'm sure many of you are familiar with these data quality issues with NHD. And of course, there's, depressions or areas in the dam that could support a blue line stream that doesn't reflect that in NHD. So you see some of those examples here, and I'll kind of go through these here quickly. And then at a more regional view, you can kind of see how there's, digitizing error discrepancies and how the density of those features were collected over time. So you can obviously, just below the county name of Johnson there, you've got much more densely collected blue line streams in the surrounding areas. So again, and I'm, beating a dead horse here, but there's a variety of data quality issues that really highlight the need for Tennessee, enhancing our hydrography, or working with USGS and developing a new data set through 3DHP. And here's a slide that I stole from USGS, where it really talks about the relationship between, obviously, the elevation, terrain, and the hydrography data, with obviously the goal of getting to what we see in the lower right corner there, where the hydrography is extracted and derived from the QL2 LiDAR. So where are we now? We've been promoting 3DHP for the last 8 to 12 months, trying to look at anticipating when USGS is going to come out with a BAA for 3DHP, and realizing that, we've got to look at, agency budget cycles and getting this, in front of the leadership within these different agencies and getting their buy-in, getting, line items in their budgets, if it's new money or if it's money that comes from their existing budget that's simply reallocated to 3DHP. Our experience is that, going through 3DEP is that you need at least a year lead time to work that into that budgeting cycle to get funding to support a project from that could be funded through USGS. So we've been talking to USDA NRCS, state soil scientists here in Tennessee. We've had some good conversations. We've also been engaged with the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is a big player in the state in terms of geospatial and funding. And they're not only a provider for energy, but they're also very active in a variety of other things beyond just simply being a provider for electricity in Tennessee and surrounding states. And then within state government, our Department of Transportation, which was a significant player with 3DEP, along with our Department of Environment and Conservation, are the two key agencies that are really doing the heavy lifting in terms of funding for 3DHP in our state. We've also had talked with local government. We got some funding commitments from them. So looking back over the past year, again, not only is it about trying to align these projects with budget cycles, but it's also about getting contracts in place. With 3DEP, it took us about 6 months to get a finalized contract in place between the state and USGS. With 3DHP, it was closer to almost a year to getting all the terms and conditions, all the attorneys' input, as you can imagine, all those, contract negotiations, what have you, took a significant amount of time. So thankfully, that's behind us. We do have a contract in place, and we are ready to start with a pilot project for 3DHP. So we've selected one small, one HUC 10 in East Tennessee. As you can see here, and I'm sure most of you already realize that unlike 3DEP, the 3DHP isn't going to be collected based on political boundaries, but instead on hydrologic units, either HUC 10 or HUC 8s. So the selection process for this was involving the Tennessee Valley Authority. And at first we were going to try and do a pilot that not only included the 3DHP deliverables, but we were also going to try and include a pilot for bathymetry. Long story short, the funding for that didn't come through from TVA, so our pilot is going to be limited to just the standard 3DHP products. So again, we're at the point now where we're going to be, we actually have our kickoff meeting tomorrow with USGS and their gypsy contractor. Wolpert was the one that was selected for this pilot. Wolpert did our statewide 3DEP LiDAR collection. And so they'll be working with us on this Holston pilot project with funding from my agency. I'm with the Department of Finance and Administration. The GIS coordination is part of the enterprise IT within state government. And so there is a small GIS fund that we were able to tap into to support this pilot project. But as I mentioned, we've been trying to look beyond the pilot and position ourselves for a much broader FY24 collection in Middle Tennessee. So we're trying to not get too far out ahead of USGS, but we're wanting to be ready with a shovel-ready project, I should say, rather, once a BAA comes out, hopefully, this fall from USGS in fiscal year 2024. So this is what that map looks like. We've identified, based on input from local government, from state agencies, these 6 HUC 8 subbasins in Middle Tennessee. I think it's about 6,500 square miles, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a fairly large area, excuse me. Yeah, so we've got our pilot underway, and then again, hopefully, once USGS comes out with the BAA in later calendar 2023, we'll be in a position to submit our proposal for this this area in Tennessee. I'm going to quickly go through some of these. I'm sure some of you have already seen this or are familiar with what the 3DHP features look like. And this is some sample data from, I think it's the state of Oregon. So this is what we're wanting to develop as part of our pilot, not only to get a sample data set, but what we're wanting to do is to do some training and outreach, and I'll touch base on that in a little bit, but this is what our breakdown of our funding commitment looks like for our proposed FY24 Middle Tennessee project. Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation, Tennessee Department of Transportation, and Davidson County, which is Nashville proper, have committed funding, and then we've got potential funding from a couple other counties and along with the Tennessee Valley Authority. So yeah, potential funding just not quite at 1.3 million, with the estimated cost for the project at about 1.7. So we're looking for either NRCS to make up the difference and or expand the project area, and then looking for USGS to make up the difference in our BAA proposal. Right. leverage, USGS funding as part of the effort. So we're looking at statewide a 5-year effort to complete the 3DHP. Again, our 2 anchor agencies, transportation and environment and conservation, we're wanting to contribute $625,000 each. We're putting together, and I'm not sure how it works in other states, but the contract for 3DHP is between my agency, FNA, and USGS. So we have to put together interagency agreements for getting reimbursed by those 2 agencies for their contributions. So we're kind of working with those agencies on those agreements as we speak. So again, looking for local government, looking for other federal agencies, NRCS, to contribute for this. But one of the things that's been we've had some success with is answering the question, why should we invest in 3DHP, right? Why is this important for transportation? How is this beneficial for environment and conservation? So, and I'll be the first to attest, I'm not an expert in hydrography, nor do I fully understand the benefits of how hydrography can be leveraged by these 2 agencies. So what I did was I was fortunate enough to leverage some expertise, some GIS folks in these 2 agencies, and talk about 3DHP with them and sort of empower them to talk to their folks within their agency and their business units of how 3DHP can be beneficial and how they can gain some value from this enhanced data set. So let me switch over from my PowerPoint to, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we're good.
Okay. So to talk about the use cases for those 2 agencies, what I want to do is kind of highlight our hub site that we've developed, or it's in development rather, for hydrography. We have similar hub sites for our imagery program, for our LiDAR program, and we've started this development for our hydrography hub about a month ago or so. Shout out to Paul Dudley and Suzanne White on my team for their hard work on this. So, so as you can see here, we've got some cards that talk about, sort of generically what is hydrography, links to the 3DHP effort, other hydrography resources, and then similar to our LiDAR program, we're wanting to develop some curriculum for training, putting together some either in-class, instructor-led training and or YouTube videos similar to our LiDAR effort that kind of showcase what the data products are and how you can benefit from using that. So let me jump into the 3DHP. And again, we stole some images from USGS. And we have just some basic information about 3DHP. And then we've got our statewide map, again, that showcases our pilot area in East Tennessee for the Holston River, and then our proposed FY24 Middle Tennessee project. Just kind of quickly going through some of this. I have some more details about each of those 2 projects. And then we have links to our use cases. So this is what I was talking about earlier, is we put together, with the help of some subject matter experts in these two agencies some documents that help the leadership in those two agencies understand what is 3D hydrography, why do we need a new hydrography data set, and how, in this case here, how can the Department of Environment and Conservation benefit from 3DHP? You know, obviously, Dewberry did a lot of good work at the federal level and talking about use cases and ROI and what have you. But I think this really was beneficial as we look at, you know, trying to break it down and having, you know, a commissioner or, you know, directors of an agency understand, you know, how GIS data and this hydrography data can benefit various programs within their agency, whether it's, you know, in the case of water resources, safe dams, the MS4 program, public water supply, natural resources, compliance. You know, this, I'm not going to go through all of these here, but this was very beneficial in going through that exercise of engaging those business units, you know, to really understand how this can be used. And so we put this together, and this is a large reason why we were able to get funding, was going through that exercise and putting on paper what those benefits are and how, you know, the different business units within that agency can benefit. Let me, so that was Environment and Conservation. And we also have our Department of Transportation, similar format with, you know, what is 3D hydrography? Why do we need a new data set? Blah, blah, blah. And then we get into the details of transportation and how, you know, structures division can benefit from it, long range planning, maintenance operations, the environmental division. Again, I'm not going to read through all this, but again, the point of emphasis is for other states that are considering, you know, trying to leverage funding from another state agency. I would highly encourage you to either lean on this as an example, or, you know, find other folks within those agencies that fully understand the business, you know, of that agency, and, you know, figure out, you know, what those use cases are that really can sell or bring home, translate that into hard dollar funding to support this effort. Let me go back to the hub site. So there's other links. Phil, we got a link for you out there, buddy. NSGIC's 3DHP hubs out on our site. Links to the USGS information. We've got the training sites under development. I'm not going to really show that one, but then on the resources, we have links to an interactive map that shows the various watersheds that are scale dependent, links to different divisions, links to our existing hydro data set, links for USGS resources, NHD, WBD, and other federal related hydrography programs as well. So again, this is all in draft form under development, but you know, the benefit for this is not only for, well, it's for multiple folks. One, for the general public to understand or to learn more about what we're doing, our stakeholder community and our funding partners, and then potential partners, you know. And I'll point to or bring up this watersheds in Tennessee map. One of the challenges, I think, for all of us is going to be, given the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, the 3DHP data isn't going to be collected on political boundaries, but on either HUC 10 or HUC 8 watersheds. We're going to have to coordinate with our neighboring states. And, you know, Tennessee, like Missouri, has 8 states that border our state. So I've got my work cut out for me in terms of, you know, identifying, we'll just zoom in, for example, we're going to have to work with Kentucky to figure out, you know, which one of these HUC 10s do we include in future projects, and how is that going to be funded? Who funds, you know, does USGS make up the difference on areas outside of Tennessee? Are there multi-state proposals? You know, there's all kinds of, you know, questions, but this is a good tool to visually see and understand the relationship between the HUC 8, HUC 10 boundaries in your state, and figuring out, you know, how are you going to go about managing that as, you know, a data, you know, various data collection projects over a 5-year, or, you know, whatever the outlook is for your state. So again, just a variety of tools and resources that we've put together here for internal use, for external users, for our stakeholder partners, the general public. You know, so I would encourage you to, if you're not familiar with Hub, I would, you know, I would get familiar, and it's a great tool to highlight initiatives. And so, again, this is under development, but we can, again, I would encourage you also, going back to the use cases, we've put these out here for the NSGIC community to benefit from, if you see there's an opportunity to leverage some of that information and in your state. So that's really all that I have. So I'll be happy to entertain questions about the PowerPoint or our Hub site or anything else that is relevant for the discussion today.
Dennis, there's some questions in the chat, and I'll read them and invite the speaker to come on if they'd like. Emily Mercurios asks, generally, what guides the choice for a pilot area? Is it community need or interest, or something less tangible? And she thought it was a great presentation. So how did you end up in the Holston?
Well, we were trying to get, as I mentioned earlier, the Tennessee Valley Authority to participate with the pilot and contribute funding. And so we had looked at, there was about, I think there were 4 HUC 10s that we were looking at in terms of the bathymetry in particular. And we had input from some folks from USGS on that, and looking at, you know, which river systems were more appropriate for bathymetry data collection, turbidity issues, things like that. So it was really about trying to find funding sources. An external funding source from TVA is why we picked the Holston, but unfortunately, you know, they didn't come through with the bathymetry funding. So, so yeah, unfortunately, we're still, well, not unfortunately, but we're still moving forward with the Holston as our pilot area, and hoping that at some point in the future, TVA will still be a contributor to future projects.
Okay, great. Mark Cohn was curious as to what percentage of the state is your Middle Tennessee project? Do you have an estimate on that?
It's probably about between 15 and 20%. If I had to guess, somewhere around there.
And we're going to let you edit this Q&A so you can check it on the backside. How's that?
Sounds good.
It's a big piece of the state. Phil asks, can you speak to the history, process, steps of estimating the cost of the 3D HP for the Middle Tennessee project to develop the budget you now have today?
Yeah, we worked with USGS on getting I think it's called an Independent Government Cost Estimate, IGCE. We also got some rough estimates from some of the business partners. So those two sources combined is kind of what we went with. We still, I mean, it's still an estimate, right? So we don't have a hard dollar number, and probably won't until we get further along working with USGS on a BAA, and I can't recall, to be honest with you, the sequential steps of if you get the IGCE before or after you submit your BAA. I can't recall, but yeah,
Right.
the 1.7 was just a very rough estimate. And that number certainly could change.
Sue or Steve, would you like to jump in on that process?
Sure. Generally speaking, the cost estimates can come from a couple different places. You can work with the GPSC contractor to get what they think is a cost estimate, or you can request a preliminary IGCE from us, and that's before you submit your application. So that would be the basis of the project cost that you use in your application. You can also use other sources, but it's best to talk to a contractor or ask us for a preliminary IGCE.
So Dennis, this is Phil. Did you define the area or refine the area based on your cost estimate, or was that Middle Tennessee project always your goal?
Well, we had Davidson County. They approached us about wanting to be the pilot. And so we knew that we wanted to, since they weren't the pilot, we wanted to include them on any project beyond the pilot. So that was sort of our starting point, was Davidson County, Nashville area. And then we just kind of worked out from there. We talked with some surrounding counties, and they were very interested. And then some of the work from our Department of Environment and Conservation, they were very interested in areas south of Nashville. So there was a number of drivers determining why and how we picked the Middle Tennessee area as the sort of the first one out of the gate.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Dennis, I had a quick, so this website you're working on, I'm assuming is going to be publicly available. It's still in draft form, and we'll be free to share the URL when published.
Yeah, it's and maybe I should just put that in the chat.
If you could put in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's just hydro.tn.gov. See here. We had some discussions, to be honest, whether we should, I think it's ready to be shared, although it's still under construction. I think it's at a point where, we can make it publicly accessible. So, yeah.
Okay, but that will remain the URL once
Yes.
it firms and everything.
Correct.
Jane Schaefer Kramer had a quick question. Did you say you'll have the whole state done in 5 years? And can you maybe elaborate on where that projection comes from?
Well, that's the plan. Whether we get there or not remains to be seen. But as you can see on the map, we've, as I mentioned earlier with the percentage, it's 15 to 20%. So 5 years, hopefully we can get the whole state. Another driver with the 5 years is that state contracts can't exceed a 5-year duration. So just in terms of contract management, we're hoping to get this done in 5 years. Otherwise, we're going to have to rewrite a whole new contract with USGS. And part of that's based on the 3DEP history. We were able to do the 3DEP QL2 acquisition in 5 years.
confused. Can you elaborate on that? I mean, isn't each a separate contract?
No, the contract, there are separate BAA proposals that we'll have to submit. And so the contract that we have is a 5-year contract, assuming we'll get awarded from USGS each of the 5 years, right?
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
well, let me hop in and clarify a little bit. I think Dennis uses the term contract where we use the term agreement. So we have an agreement that we can add funding to with Dennis, and then the task order for GPSC is different. It's separate from that agreement / contract that Dennis is talking about. So he's done a task order on the GPSC contract for the Holston 10-digit hydrologic unit, and next year, or this coming fiscal year, given a BAA for 3DHP, we can do another task order on the same agreement, which is basically the money part of it. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
There's just a
So-
terminology difference, I think.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Emily Mercurio asked, what was the, I think she, if it was already said, what was the budget for the Huck 10 pilot? I know it was in the slide.
It wasn't in the slide that we budget for the Middle Tennessee. The Huck 10 pilot is 105,000, 110,000, I think. That's with the 6% USGS QAQC. Yeah, it's 110,000.
Okay. Kia, apologize. Was there anything more or extra that you wanted in your data deliverables that were not in the standard product, USGS product?
Ask me in about a year when we get our pilot data. Yeah, I mean, we're just going to go with the basic deliverables. The hydro enforced DEM, the stream network, and the other miscellaneous standard products that are part of the 3DHP is what we're going to be getting for the pilot. But until we kick the tires and really start to use some of the data or get some feedback from other users, at this point, don't really know if there's other needs. We talked earlier about the bathymetry, which the bathymetry, and I'll defer to USGS on this, but the bathymetry really kind of, in my view, kind of falls under 3DEP, not 3DHP. I could be wrong, and USGS may have a totally different viewpoint on that, but it's, we didn't get the bathymetry in our pilot, so that's potentially one data set that we would like to have that we currently is not part of the pilot.
Sue or Steve, would you like to, or Sylvia, if she's on, address the bathymetry question and relative to 3DEP, 3DHP?
Yeah, I'll hop in from the sort of contracting standpoint. We would have to do a different task order for the bathymetry, so we wouldn't do 3DHP and inland bathymetry on the same task order. So in a way, we treat it, it's kind of in between, but we treat right now inland bathymetry projects as special projects. They're a little more under the umbrella of 3DEP. They're really under the umbrella of the 3D national terrain or topography model.
So that crossover and building towards that national terrain model.
Yes.
Eric asks, is your pilot project creating work in accord with the EDH specs, and does it include ingestion into 3DHP?
Yeah, we're relying on Wolpert and their their EDH tools and process that's defined, deliverables defined by USGS. What was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
Does this all include ingestion into 3DHP as part of your contract? When the work is done, will it automatically be ingested into 3DHP? And Eric, if you want to come on if I've misrepresented.
You got Sue and Steve know a lot more than me about that.
Yeah, I can jump in here, Dennis. This is Steve H.L. The ingest will actually be handled by USGS. So the data acquisition portion is producing that elevation derived hydrography data, kind of the basic geometry files, and then that ingest process will do the enrichment of having the network attributes and all the other stuff that goes along with having an intelligent network rather than just kind of an unintelligent network. But yes, ingest will be included in the process, but that'll be something the USGS handles rather than having stewards handle it through a conflation tool, for example.
With the contractor being responsible, the GIPSy contractor being responsible for compliance.
They just have to produce data that passes the validation tests, and then USGS staff will do the ingest.
I've got a few questions about accessing that link you provided, Dennis. Apparently you have to have some permissions, but I will follow up with Dennis to make sure that
it currently may not work. We'll turn that off here before the day is out. So that link will work in short order. We'll get that fixed and make it publicly available. Sorry about that.
No, thank you. And Paul has said that you'll coordinate with us and we'll get it out to the group. Thank you, Paul. Frank Nelson asked, how is this EDH work tied to updating LIDAR across Tennessee? Do you currently have holes in your LIDAR data that require being filled before doing the 3DEP work?
We have statewide QL2 coverage in Tennessee. We actually have one county that's got a QL1 collection. So there's really no gaps in terms of LIDAR coverage to support EDH and 3DHP. And that's something else that we're continuing to look at is, it's a sort of a separate discussion, but, we're talking with our DOT and NRCS about our strategy for updating 3DEP and how we go about collecting QL1 LIDAR for the future. And we don't really have a definitive answer, but we're probably looking at more of a strategy of trying to identify terrain change as opposed to just doing a blanket coverage of new LIDAR data. But the question then is, how do you identify terrain change, and to what extent is there a terrain change that warrants a recollection? People talk about an 8-year update cycle. Well, depending upon where you are in Tennessee or where you are in the country for that matter, 8 years may not be good enough, or 15 years may be adequate. It just depends on, again, terrain change and how you quantify terrain change, right? So that's something we're continuing to evaluate, but don't have a good answer for currently on that.
Steve or Sue, would you like to comment on the value of statewide coverage?
Sorry, statewide coverage of
3DEP.
Yeah, with respect to deriving EDH for 3DHP, our goal, our requirement is that the EDH be derived from QL2 or better 3DEP quality data. So statewide coverage is pretty important. I mean, if you have data that covers a certain set of hydrologic units, and you want to start there, and you have other data coming through the 3-dep process, that could be a way to prioritize your work. But bottom line is that 3-dep is our base for 3DHP. And so statewide coverage or HUC by HUC coverage is paramount.
Okay, well, that helps with the HUC selection process, doesn't it?
It narrows it down in some places for sure, yeah.
Frank Nelson asked, how will you be handling karst invariance and stream permanence, which isn't baked into the LiDAR data that may influence the EDH deliverable? And Dennis, if you want to punt that to USGS.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm the best suited to answer that question. Sue or Steve?
I may take this one. This is
Oh, there
Sylvia.
she is. I
Oh,
didn't
Sylvia,
see you
yeah.
on here. Where are, I don't see you on the list.
Here.
You're snooped in.
We do have some experience with karst in Pennsylvania. So we've written some guidelines for the contractors to collect data in karst terrain. We do collect the sinks where the network will end on the surface, and it's a network. It's an end of that network, but it also allows underground conduits that have been mapped to be added in. But the main thing that we're trying to avoid is adding unknown connections that are underground or groundwater connections. Unless they've been mapped, we'd like to leave them out of the network so that we aren't routing water in ways that may not be real. So we're being more cautious than some would like, probably, because we won't have network connectivity everywhere, but we won't have in karst terrain anyway, we won't have connections that are not known. But if they've been mapped, those can be added in as underground conduits, just like they were in NHD.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, did somebody else want to comment? All right, Joel Osano Williams, does the state have reliable and current statewide infrastructure data, such as culvert data, to use in the production of the EDH?
We have some culvert data for the pilot. We were able to work with our DOT. They've got a separate project for trying to map culverts. So we do have some, but probably not. Well, not probably. I know we don't have all the culverts mapped for the pilot area. So yeah, that's something else that we're going to learn in the pilot is, to what extent was the TDOT culvert data helpful? How should we, what lessons learned there can we apply to the Middle Tennessee project for identifying culverts, or, whether it's through acquisition from our DOT or from some other source, would be it local government or other, don't know at this point.
Thank you. Let me scroll down one more. Phil asked, are either of these projects using USGS 1 meter DEM or, excuse me, OPR DEM data? And is the DEM data seamless?
Yes, it is the 1 meter DEM. That was part of our statewide QL2 LiDAR collection. As far as it being seamless, I think that's really I think part of the potential reason why Wolpert was selected, since they were the business partner for doing 3DEP. They probably have that data available, or they can have it more readily accessible in a seamless format than as opposed to us trying to provide that to them as a data source to do the EDH.
All right, did I miss anyone? I apologize as I scroll through the chat. If I missed, please feel free to come off and ask your question. And then last call for questions. Did you have something you just wanted to ask Dennis before we get off the call? All right, then I'm going to get the screen back. Okay, great. So thank you all. Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it. Great presentation, lots of comments in the chat, appreciating the information. What I appreciate, we have a lot of technical talks, and when you get down and talking about what I loved about this is you went out and you figured out who are these key business partners and what's their use case, because that's how you're going to get the thing done, right? By getting folks enlisted. So the stakeholder approach, the planning, the outreach and training to get more stakeholders involved, the use of a pilot in preparation for your BAA, very informative. I also appreciate early on some comments you made early on. And yeah, working with budget cycles and planning ahead, because I think we all know what that looks like. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindy.
Appreciate you presenting. Our next forum will be July 19th, and we are going to have a joint presentation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We'll be talking about national wetlands inventory mapping and interoperability with the 3DHP dataset. And we're also hoping to hear a little bit more about the 3DHP funding program when by July. So, did I just? Can you still see the screen?
No,
No.
no screen.
I think I just lost it. Well, that's a how did I lose the presentation? Oh well, so that is our next forum coming up, and if you have questions in the meantime, let me try this again. Share. If you have ideas, things that you would like to present, just reach out to me and let me know. And also, please plan ahead for NSGIC New Orleans. It's going to be a great meeting, and we'd like to see your smiling faces, not on a Zoom lens. So, any last questions or comments from anybody? All right, thank you for your time today, and hopefully we'll see you next month. Same time, same place.
Thanks, Linda.